Welcome to Slight Reliability, the show where we learn about SRE and observability 1 week at a time. I'm your host, Stephen Townsend. Welcome back to Slight Reliability. I'm Stephen Townsend, and this is the show where we learn about SRE and observability. And it's been a really long time. I must apologize. I think it's been about 3 months since I last released an episode. But this entire year, it's been a pretty tough year for me, and there's been a lot going on. On the personal front, my dad got sick, and very suddenly. He was completely healthy before that, and then lost his life 3.5 weeks later. And that was a really difficult time. And we also lost my mother-in-law, and uncle a couple of weeks ago. It's been a really challenging year from a personal point of view. And from the work side of things, the cognitive load has been really, really high this year. I finish a lot of my days at work without the energy to do a lot of creative things. But I have been doing some other projects in my spare time. I've been DMing a D&D campaign. I'm on a break at the moment, but I have been for the year. I am working on another completely different, totally creative, fantastical podcast as well. But I've also just struggled to exercise and look after myself a lot of the time. But here I am, and I wanted to close out the year and hopefully get things in a position where we're good to go in 2025. So what have I been working on? Well, I started out the beginning of the year, since actually November 2023, as an environment manager, which is a role really only required in big enterprises that have big, complicated, integrated test environments. And they need those to deliver their products and services from an end-to-end perspective. So I started doing that, and my sort of goal was to apply SRE and reliability practices to make those environments as reliable and available and simple to operate as possible. So that's how it started. Now I'm managing a team of 7 people across environments, release, and end-to-end testing for a really big, complex ecosystem. So as I said, I've been trying to apply reliability engineering practices in my work, and I've got a couple of engineers who are primarily there to work on these projects. And we are working on a few different initiatives at the moment. We have to start somewhere, and a lot of them relate to the bigger concept of observability. I've been referring to this kind of work as non-production SRE or non-production reliability engineering. And here are some of the things we've been working on. The one that we're pretty close to having an MVP for is this idea of, we call it active service monitoring, but really all it is synthetic transactions run in our integrated test environments. Now, from my experience and from talking to people in the industry, synthetics are often used only in production. And that makes sense for production, but it also makes sense in our integrated test environments if they are on the path to production. If those environments need to be up and running in order for our teams to deliver value, then it's really important they are reliable. And that's why we're doing this. So we've been standing that up from scratch. We've been collaborating with test engineers into how to best do this in a sort of sustainable, easy to manage way, leveraging other assets that have already been built if possible. We are using our enterprise observability platform, which is New Relic, and setting up a basic process, the things that you don't think of. How do you alert? Do you want to alert 24/7 or only particular times of the day? Do you want to maybe mute alerting at particular times when you know there's a disruptive deployment occurring? Things like that. And just getting an alert to a shared mailbox that the team keeps an eye on. It's that social engineering side of things. It's all very well to set up this synthetic monitoring and to have it alerting somewhere, but is anyone looking at it? And how do we respond when we see something? So that's been really interesting and a great opportunity in a fairly safe way to experiment with SRE concepts. Another initiative we've been working on is this idea of automatically tracking change or deployments in our non-production environments. Now, it's pretty standard for any production release or deployment, if those things are the same, which they aren't always, to track that somehow, to create a change record in some system. Now, that isn't often done in non-production environments. So you're talking about a system integration test environment or a user acceptance testing environment, a performance test environment, a pre-production environment or staging environment. So what we're doing is we saw an opportunity because there are systems in place to capture production deployments, but there were things about those systems and the sort of control and governance around those, which made it quite difficult for some of our delivery or development teams to get on board with and to have easy access to and to work with. So what we've been trying to do is build a very simple utility which gives delivery teams the flexibility to share information about their deployments with us in a way that works for them. So we can go out and pull information from a tool or a system or a data store, or we can provide an API which they can call, these teams can call to let us know that they're doing a deployment and how long it took and whether it succeeded, that sort of thing. Now, we're trying not to overdo it and we want to leverage existing tools wherever possible. But our theory at the moment is that providing the flexibility, although it creates more for us to maintain, is the best way to start and demonstrate the value. Now, the dream here is that we all have a timeline, and I can see in a complex environment with maybe 30 different systems and services, I can see exactly what system was deployed and what time and what version of that code package or package was delivered in a timeline. Because if we can see that, that will completely open the lid on what change is occurring in these big, complex environments. And the third thing, which has been really exciting for me personally to be working on in the last couple of days, is defining a non-production incident response process. So you're probably more familiar with the term environment issue. An environment issue is, as far as I can tell, an incident which just happens to occur in another environment that isn't production. So we want an incident response process, and it probably doesn't make sense in our organization to follow the production process because there's a lot of structure and process and people that need to be involved in that, and it doesn't make sense for what we're trying to do. So we've defined an incident response process ourselves, and we've just actually had our first environment issue or incident the other day relating to an issue with our vendor which prevented us from deploying anything for a period of time, for a number of hours. And that was our first chance to see how that went. And it was amazing when the issue occurred and we'd talked for quite a long time about how we would go about this. But that kind of went out the door when the panic hits. And it was a great opportunity to learn from that experience and just forget about the root cause for a second and say, what can we, in our power, what's in our power? What can we do different next time to make it easier for us and to give everyone else a better experience? And it was mostly about communication and creating a ticket to have that traceability of what happened as well. Simple stuff, but it's exciting to see that come to fruition, and I'm enjoying that a lot. There's definitely been some challenges this year. It's not been as simple as let's just go and do SRE and non-production. One of the challenges has been working with SaaS products, but a new level of SaaS products. So in my experience, there are complex applications, maybe systems of record, which have traditionally been hosted on premise or at least self-hosted in the cloud by an organization. And vendors around the world now, I've seen a bit of a trend of taking those essentially COTS products and shifting them into the cloud, hosted by the vendor. There are purported benefits to an organization who purchases one of these as a service rather than buying a product and running it themselves, not needing to have infrastructure or teams to look after that infrastructure is the main selling point, and being able to keep up with the latest version of what's being delivered by the vendor. But there are other challenges which maybe we didn't foresee around the level of observability, about the level of control and what we can do when there's an issue, other than raising a support case. So that's been an interesting experience, along with the whole new skill for me about managing that vendor relationship. Now, I'm not managing the relationship or myself, I'm not leading that, but I have to be involved in that. Figuring out how can we get the features that we want into the backlog so the vendor can deliver them for us, that kind of thing. The other challenge is that I think it's pretty fair to say that across any complex organization, this whole domain of environments and release, which is also under my domain now, is extremely complex, especially in a big enterprise. It's a challenge that honestly, some days I wake up and say, I'm not up for this. I can't figure out, I can't see a path forward to make this easier, to make this better, to make this work. It's just the nature of the beast. It's always been that as far as I can remember. On the other side of things, I have absolutely adored people leadership, or people management really. It's been the real big learning for me this year. I don't know if you noticed, but I did create a Medium blog called Bleeding Tech, where I meant to explore all of the things I was learning throughout the year. Due to the cognitive load, I've only released two blog posts this year, one about trunk-based development and another about the work of a tech manager, which I got from feedback from all of the community when I posted my questions on LinkedIn and spoke to others in the industry. So that's been a huge amount of learning for me. I've built, I think, a really strong team culture. We trust each other. We have a vision about where we want to go, and we've kind of bought into that collectively. We push ourselves a little bit outside our boundaries at times, which is great, outside our comfort zones. And we continually work to improve. And that is perhaps my biggest achievement this year, and absolutely what I set out to do. However, the real challenge is less about the leadership side of things and maybe more about the product ownership side, or the management side of things. Is I've gone from an individual contributor to a person who's helping to coordinate a group of people to collectively achieve something together. And that's been really hard for me. I didn't have the tools necessarily to do that. I got stuck between just saying, go and do the thing, and not giving enough guidance, or I jump in and want to do it myself. So I've had to find a way to completely shift the way I think about work. And how can we structure that in a way which gives people the autonomy to solve problems creatively for themselves, but also gives them enough clarity about what we're trying to achieve and what I want to see at the end of it. As the essentially product owner for our team at the moment, because we don't have that as a dedicated role. It's been a little bit hard to let go of the individual contributor hat at times, I have to say, to let go of the reins. But ultimately, I think it's for the best. I think collections of people can achieve a lot more than an individual, and I really get a kick out of seeing other people engage in the work, achieve things, go beyond what they thought was possible in their work as well. So, the $1 million question, what is next for Slight Reliability? Well, honestly, I'm not sure. I have no intention of stopping the podcast, and I fully intend to ramp it up again next year. But it really depends about what sort of intensity my work is going to be like day to day, what's going on in my personal life. But I would like to bring a bit more of Slight Reliability back into the world and into my life, because it enriches me. I enjoy creating the content. I enjoy releasing it. And more than anything, I enjoy the conversations that stems and the interaction that I have with all of you out of the industry. I think it's important for me to make mental space for myself to do this podcast and other creative outlets, because they energize me. And if I don't make the time for the work that I love, I'll burn out, right? I recently had my first taster into the world of resilience engineering, which is a new thing for me. There's a podcast called This Is Fine by Colette Alexander, and I'm going to mess up the surname here, and Clint Byram or Byram. And that's something I've been listening to, and that's great. So I highly recommend that. And I have a feeling that that whole resilience engineering world, which I've only just had a taster about is super aligned to the way that I think about socio-technical systems and the bigger picture of what we're trying to do. Okay, so now I'm going to do something I've never done before, so bear with me. I want to put in a word for a vendor because most of you know, last year I worked as a developer advocate for a company called SquaredUp. SquaredUp actually purchased the rights to Slight Reliability, this podcast, when I joined them. And when I left, they just gave the rights back to me for free, with one condition, that I'd continue to mention SquaredUp in my episodes for the rest of this year, which I did, but I haven't released a lot of episodes. So I feel like I've done SquaredUp an injustice. So I just wanted to do a little pitch for SquaredUp, which they don't know that I'm going to do, by the way. And the things I'm going to say are not part of their official marketing. It's just my own words, what I think. So SquaredUp, I think, is a unified single pane of glass into the state of your applications, your services, your systems, your customers, your finances, or anything that really matters to you. And unlike other similar tools, SquaredUp doesn't try and store or own your data. It just brings it together in real time so you can visualize it, monitor it, and alert on anything. I think it's a pretty elegant, straightforward, and unpretentious way to track what matters, to inform decisions, and to tell stories with data. Aside from the product, SquaredUp as a company is one of, if not the friendliest, down-to-earth, most honest and caring organizations I've ever encountered. And it was genuinely a privilege to have worked for them and now with them. So if you want a vendor who listens to you, who cares about you and is agile enough to implement the features that you want, then I can't recommend SquaredUp enough. And you can try it for free by going on to squaredup.com, which I've been doing recently, actually. I've been trying out something for my own interest. So advertising is over now. And I guess I'd really just like to finish by thanking this year's guests: Amin Astani, Itziel Schwartz, Dan Sliman, Dom Finn, Artem Yakimenko, Zach Michael, and Karanveer Anand, and everyone who contributed to the discussions online, primarily on LinkedIn, where I mostly post. And most of all, to everyone who's listened to Slight Reliability this year, and well, at any time at all, really. So wherever you are in the world, I hope that you have a wonderful new year, and I look forward to bringing you more SRE and observability and maybe some resilience engineering in 2025. And if you have a story to tell, you want to ask a question, or you have an idea in this world of reliability that you want to explore, reach out to me and let's talk about it. That's all. Have a wonderful end of your year, and I'll see you next time.